The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report. Dom here, and our guest today is John Delmenico, editor of the Chaser website, who's had his eyes absolutely glued to events in Paris. John, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited that this podcast will have an episode not about American politics.
Yes, it's a change, although shall we talk about America? The LA Games, the end, Tom Cruise. No, let's not get to that first because from my sense, John, is that the biggest story of Paris 2024, certainly from an Australian perspective, but really, given the number of think pieces that have been launched globally in the past 48 hours or so, surely Raygun is the star of the games, really from any country in any event.
I mean, it's shocking that people are talking about Australian breakdancing.
Yes.
Like, if we did okay, no one would have talked about it. And everyone like, oh, Australia sent some breakdancers, they did okay, that's what you'd expect. We're talking about it as if Australia has this huge breakdancing culture now, and
yes,
she's broken the mold.
She absolutely has. She's got people talking. And look, I didn't watch it until a long time afterwards. I didn't see it until, I guess, it went viral, the kangaroo hops and all that kind of stuff. And I must say, as a middle-aged person, I did feel represented at this festival of youthful athleticism. What was your take on it all?
I thought it was extremely brave for someone who is an academic to go into the arts, because in Australia, that is the only place less respected and valued than academia. Like, she's taken a step down that is almost impossible to make. She really got up there, and none of the other breakdancers did the sprinkler. She's showing the traditional moves of dancing. Sure, it's not technically a breakdancing move, but it's a move that everyone knows and can feel inspired to do now. She brought it back.
Yeah, the high school formal energy, I think, was considerable. And, I mean, the thing is, I was around in the 80s when breakdancing first emerged, and there were movies like Breakdance and Breakdance 2 Electric Boogaloo. In a sec, we'll analyse this in a bit more detail because it was nostalgic for me. The thing is, John, I remember when breakdancing was unequivocally cool, right, in the 80s. It was absolutely the thing. And it's kind of weird that it's been considered a great way to get the youth on board. I want to get your thoughts on that in a second. But it's fair to say that the notion of doing a sort of backspin, like, it was always a bit weird. The notion, like, even when at the height of its coolness, it was still an objectively strange bunch of things to do with your body.
It's one of those things where it's really impressive if someone is very good at it,
Yes.
and then it is completely uncool and you don't want to see it the moment someone isn't amazing at it. It's like magic, where if someone does an insanely good magic trick, you're like, whoa, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But the moment that they like drop a card, or you see where the magic trick's coming before it happens, or you feel like you could do it yourself, it loses any respect in the game.
Yes, the suspension of disbelief just shatters. And I also want to put it to you, John, I don't know how anybody could have unleashed a breakdancing performance wearing those clothes that looked amazing.
It was
what
someone
was with
online
the outfit?
described it as PE teacher uniform.
Yes, PE
which
teacher, that's so true.
is the only thing that Raygun has responded to so far of the criticism, because she
What did
pointed
she
out
say?
that the male competitors didn't get that same response. But also the male competitors hadn't competed yet. And they have the same terrible uniform. I say equal opportunity, both of them looked bad in their sweatsuits during the middle of summer as well.
Yeah, it'd be fair to say Jay Attack, aged 16, he won at least one judge's approval. So in that sense, did slightly better than Raygun. But no, look, they're not great clothes. I also feel that the First Nations design, which respected Australia's heritage and First Peoples of our country. I mean, we talk about paying respect to elders past and present. I think if I were the elders represented on Raygun's outfit, I'd have some concerns.
I mean, I thought Raygun was one of the elders.
Perhaps not First Nations, but no, indeed. White middle-aged energy. It wasn't as though we were suffering for not being represented, but no, very impressive.
She represented Australia in a way that we don't normally represent ourselves, where we're just openly sending a middle-aged white person to do something that's normally considered something that people of colour who are younger do. We let a mediocre white person take that spot, which is about as Australian as it comes.
That's true. In fact, it's almost as though she was appointed by the Australian media. So, I mean, if you're going to have sort of underdressed and weird energy, I think Yusuf Dikeç, the Turkish shooter who turned up with the ciggy, I think that's what Raygun should be aiming for if she wants to be in future games. Although I think breaking's not going to feature in LA 2028, which, given that, it comes from America, that does seem a bit of an indictment on breaking as an Olympic sport.
Although I genuinely think Australia, we have it in us to make the call that is obviously the wrong call, to go America's wrong and then bring it back for the Brisbane Olympics.
We can.
Like
we
most
can bring it back
countries
for
would
Brisbane.
immediately see that and be like, well, it's their thing, and they're saying it's disrespectful to the sport. We shouldn't do it. But I feel like Australia feels like the kind of country where we would go, no, that is why we should do it still.
Yeah. I mean, Raygun would be 44 at that time. Still younger than me. I think definitely sign up for that one. The other thing is, it's Brisbane, right? They could just do Nutbush or line dancing. They could take it down even more notches. All right, so there's Raygun. That's probably the most viral moment, certainly the weekend. And honestly, I think the New York Times, The Cut, I saw quite a few think pieces about Raygun. So she's certainly contributed to the literature. As an academic, I'm sure her university is very happy at her profile and at the publications that have referenced her work. So she's now probably due an academic promotion, I'd say.
I mean, she got the Prime Minister acknowledging the existence of an academic, because he came out and condemned the attacks against her, which I was surprised by, because based on the last year, I thought it takes him about 10 months to start condemning anything he thinks is bad.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But it's very weird that this has become the biggest story of the Olympics, though.
Yes.
Because
It is
like
strange,
normally
isn't it?
when there's someone who is that bad, there's usually corruption behind it, right? Like it's usually one of those things where it's the person who picked it was their niece or something.
Yeah,
But
there was
this time
someone,
who
I can't remember
actually
what it was,
competed
someone
the
in
way through it.
Africa. There was some footage of someone from Africa who'd selected their, I don't know, their niece or something to
Yeah.
compete in a college running race. That's gone viral too. All right, so let's leave Raygun there, John, because so much else happened at the games. It was quite different. It does seem to have gone pretty well, is my read on it, at least in many respects, but there's certainly plenty to talk about. I mean, it really began with the cardboard beds, didn't it?
Well, my favourite thing about the beds is every year we now have a tradition of the media talking about these anti-sex beds, which is just like not true. That was a joke that one person said, that they wouldn't want to have sex on a cardboard bed. And for some reason the media was like, oh, well then that's exactly the reason that they were chosen. And not because they're cheap, mass producible and environmentally friendly.
Yes.
Like they're a massive achievement in design that have just immediately, anytime anyone talks about them, is about one person making a joke about not wanting to have sex on them.
I mean,
but
come
this
on.
year...
It's France.
Yeah.
It's a French Olympic Games. They gave out, I think, a record number of condoms. It was not an anti-sex games, the Paris Games. How could it be?
Although there was one change with the beds this year. I don't know if you saw this, Dom, but it was all over TikTok. They introduced AI mattresses.
Really? I didn't see that.
Every single athlete got sent to an AI body scanner, and they were given these custom-made mattresses that were designed, that can be turned around and stuff to change the softness, but were designed to be the perfect match for that person's back. Now, Dom, with all the times that you've talked about AI on this podcast, do you reckon that was a good idea or a bad idea?
Yeah, it's basically saying we're going to use advanced technology to make the cardboard beds more comfortable without a mattress on them at all. That's what I'm imagining came out of it.
Yeah, so they were so hard the athletes couldn't sleep the first night. And then most countries ended up spending money to buy all their athletes mattress protectors that are thick enough to actually provide some level of comfort.
Wow.
What an amazing start to not only have the food shortage and all this stuff, but
Yes.
to somehow let AI find its way to ruin the Olympics as well.
Quite extraordinary. And I love that in order to have the sustainable beds, John, they then everyone had to go and buy a kind of plastic mattress protector or whatever and buy extra stuff, which presumably then got discarded. I imagine just dumped into the Seine. They were like, we spent $1 billion cleaning this thing up, but the games is over. Chuck your mattresses in the water. It's fine.
I mean, the mattresses will probably be as clean as everything else in that river.
The Chaser Report. News a few days after it happens.
Although this was a very historic Olympics, though, because for the first time ever, they thought that maybe it shouldn't bankrupt the country that's holding it.
Novel.
So normally, the way that the Olympics judges success for financial reasons is whether or not the country goes bankrupt within 2 years.
Yes,
And
a fair metric.
For some reason, most countries decided that they don't want that to be the metric anymore, that as long as you're not pulling a Greece, you're fine.
Yeah.
So this time around, they decided to increase the sponsorship money, decrease the amount the taxpayers pay on it, and cut a lot of corners on like venues and stuff. So that, because the main problem is, like China's facing it right now, when you build all these massive stadiums and stuff, you then have to upkeep them afterwards.
Yeah.
So even if you don't go bankrupt, you're still screwing your economy for decades to come.
Totally.
And it genuinely has been one of the cheapest Olympics for years. And the IOC came back with notes. One of the notes was better conditions for the Olympic Village. But for the most part, it was really successful. And LA is going to be introducing all this stuff to the next one. Although, I think it goes against the spirit of the games. Because going bankrupt is part of the culture of hosting the Olympics.
Absolutely it is.
But
Look, we're only just now figuring out how to make the Sydney Olympic Park work. And Sydney Olympic Park's usually a massive asphalt ghost town.
Yeah.
And it should be, stronger, higher, faster, bankrupter. Those should be the 4 principles of the Olympics.
Well, I've got good news for you, Dom, because Brisbane Olympics will not be following this new model. We are going back to the old model and creating a bunch of new stuff that we're going to let rot and just get and waste all our money decades to come afterwards. We're going back to the bankruptcy method.
Oh, that's very exciting. See, but also, isn't Brisbane's success in winning the games of 2032 symbolic of no one wanting to have them? Isn't Brisbane the ultimate you'll do in terms of the Olympics? They've got some stadiums there. They're not really very big. We'll just sort of have it there and it's fine. Because surely they would have been very happy to have it anywhere else that wanted to bid.
Well, my favourite thing was that normally how the Olympics is chosen is that you'd pick the one that's coming up in 2 years, 2 Olympics time.
Yeah.
But because there was only 2 countries vying for that Olympics, which was the upcoming LA Olympics, was Brisbane and LA, they decided to announce the next one as Brisbane just to make sure they can lock in someone for the one that comes afterwards.
In case they withdrew the bid. Yeah, I presume. That's very funny. So, all right, so this is exciting when we're looking forward to the handover from LA to Brisbane. In terms of the other events, look, we have to talk about the opening ceremony, John, with the boats on the Seine. That was a massive moment and hilariously disappointing for the rich people who'd bought tickets. And I must say, John, when I saw the person who'd paid €1,600, I think it was, on social media for a view of boats on the other side of the Seine with athletes that they could barely see when, on a very stormy day in Paris, it did give me a sense of great amusement. So thank you for that, Paris Olympics.
I'm glad that they managed to find a way to screw over the rich, especially at a time with such political turmoil in France. The idea that they still managed to come together and do what they do best, which is just scam rich people. It brings back a sense of pride that I don't think France has had for years.
It's true. It's that revolutionary spirit. I think, frankly, those rich viewers were lucky to get out of there without being guillotined. It would have been a fitting start to although the guillotine, as some have quipped, would have been made out of cardboard, so it wouldn't have worked.
I think we should adopt it for the Brisbane Olympics.
Cardboard?
Well, cardboard, and also the idea of selling tickets to rich people who aren't going to be able to see anything. Like, if we just tell Gina Reinhardt and
Clive Palmer.
Yeah, Clive Palmer, that we're going to hold it at a minefield, we can get them to pay top dollar to go to their own mines and then hold it somewhere else. I
love that opening ceremony in a mine. That would be either that or perhaps in a condo on the Gold Coast that's structurally unsound and a massive eyesore, something to channel that Queensland culture.
Although Gina will probably bring the yacht that she made all the Australian swimmers go on after the Olympics.
Oh, yes.
And she made them all wear those really ugly boots that she sells.
Oh, it's so sad. I've been reading about, one of the heartbreaking things about the games is reading how many of them can only make ends meet via OnlyFans. And I honestly don't know if I would rather have Gina Reinhardt fund me or have to take my clothes off on OnlyFans in order to continue my... I think I'd have more self-respect with OnlyFans than with Gina, but it'd honestly be a toss-up some days, I think.
Oh, at least OnlyFans isn't destroying the planet, Like,
okay.
Outside of how annoying Gina is as a person, there's also the whole mining thing. So
also, if you take a selfie of yourself and Gina, she'll make you delete it from your phone and ring up the bosses. Anyway,
she'll make you don't have to write any of those annoying letters to arts groups whenever they make fun of you.
Absolutely. So I guess the big story from an Australian perspective of the Games is this was the Games where we finally saw, and the Chaser had some good reporting on this, we finally saw some men stepping up and doing what the women could do. The traditional female dominance at the Games, a couple of men got in on the action as well.
I thought it was cute that they were giving it a go.
Yeah.
And then after a while, they ended up starting to get gold medals, which is huge. It's a real glass ceiling breaking moment.
It is.
I got to see, I think of all the young boys out there who are watching along at home and realizing that they can also grow up to win a gold medal. It's not just
That's right.
women.
That's right. And a big message here to all the young lads watching. You could go on to be, a Kaylee McCowan one day. You could go on to represent your country and not massively fail, it seems. The odds are much better if you're a female, of course. Let's not be silly. It's not as though it's ended overnight. But no, the boys are in with a shot. But it was encouraging to see.
I mean, it explains why men's sport gets so much more funding, because they need way more. Like, the women's sport are coming together. Most of the athletes aren't getting paid, and they're getting out there and doing it at the highest level possible, whereas the men are showing up with all these extra resources, and they're slowly learning how to also win their own medals. And I think it makes sense.
It's affirmative action, isn't it, for the men? Finally, they're getting some extra help. It's good to see a needs-based funding model for sport coming through for the first time. Oh, wow. You know what, John? There's still so much to cover from the games. Why don't we pick this up again tomorrow? We haven't even gotten to Snoop Dogg yet, and I think that's really worthy of a full 10 minutes of discussion, at least. So let's continue this conversation in tomorrow's episode. Catch you then.
All right.
Agu's from Road, and we're part of the Iconoclast Network.